This is a tale of the future. For centuries, the Sol hegemon has ruled uncontested the greatest swath of human space in the galaxy. Earth is long abandoned, its great cities reduced to overgrown ruins as mankind has sought new homes and new dominions amongst the stars. But now the beating heart of the Sol hegemon has been convulsed by revolution. The rebels claim they fight for freedom and equality, but are they truly any better than those whom they name oppressor? But on the fringe of human space, worlds remain untouched by war and revolt. It is to this region that the crew of the Babylon Rocker have come, seeking peace and escape, both from the chaos of revolution and the dark specters of the past. On the fringe, there is hope. On the fringe is freedom and light and opportunity. But with such freedoms and opportunities come many dangers, some of the future, others of the past that they seek to avoid. Such is the nature of the wild edge of human space. There lies adventure. There goes Babylon Rocker. Last time, Scorpion Clan champion Bayushi Atsuki, Imperial scribe Shiba Gaiju Shiko, and Doji Raigu, heir to the Crane Clan championship, had just formed a conspiracy to eventually usurp the power of the Emperor, the Gozoku. As for the Emperor in question, Hante Fujiwa knew that something was up, even if he didn't know exactly what was up, but that was far less important than nipping whatever it was in the bud. But before I can get to the meat of the matter, there are a few events that were happening roughly around this time that I want to get out of the way first. And most of it has to do with the Nazumi. If you recall the previous Imperial Decline video, back in 314, thanks to the efforts of Hiruma Kazuma, an alliance was formed between the Crab Clan and the Nazumi, specifically the Forever Racing Tomorrow tribe. In Nazumi culture, the concept of tomorrow is synonymous with the concept of death, of mortality. Thus, the name of the Forever Racing Tomorrow tribe signifies their determination to survive, to stave off tomorrow for as long as possible. In the year 389 of the Empire, a shaman named Chitik went on a scouting mission into Crab Lands. When he returned, he brought back with him a strange and disturbing story. He spoke of a village where the humans were only active during the night, and that there was something in them, a strange, dark absence, a nothingness rather than something. The chieftain of the Forever Racing Tomorrow tribe dismissed his worries, but one who did believe Chitik was his father, the elder shaman Richtotok. And so the pair of shamans returned to the strange village of the empty humans, only to find themselves under attack by them. To their horror, both Nazumi discovered that their name magic was powerless against the strange, empty humans, for there was nothing in them for the name magic to alter. Chitik died at the hands of the strange humans. Richtotok survived only by possession of a strange magical crystal that somehow protected him from the strange, empty humans. Upon his return to the Forever Racing Tomorrow tribe, the grief-stricken Richtotok insisted that the tribe must break ties with the humans, or else it would lead them all to doom. The tribe chieftain, however, repudiated this claim, insisting that their good relations with the humans could only benefit not only the tribe but the Nazumi race. At the same time, the tribe was uneased by the ravings of another shaman named Zi. Some believed Zi to be a prophet possessed by one of the Transcendents. Unfortunately, such a possession had driven him insane, so that he constantly spouted dire prophecies. Zi proclaimed that doom awaited the Forever Racing Tomorrow tribe if they did not remain united. But the disagreement between Richtotok and the chieftain was too strong, and most dismissed Zi as a madman anyway. And so, the largest of all the Nazumi tribes split apart into three. Those who agreed with the chieftain migrated north into Rokugan itself, becoming the Tattered Ear tribe and establishing closer relations with the Crab Clan. Those who agreed with Richtotok moved westward to a place known as Drawing Out Darkness Rock. the place from whence Richitalk had extracted the crystal that he believed had protected him from the strange, empty humans. These became the Crooked Tail Tribe, a tribe of paranoid fanatics dedicated to fighting the Shadowlands on their own. Meanwhile, Zi and those few who chose to stay with him remained in the old homeland of the Forever Racing Tomorrow tribe, becoming known as the Third Whisker, a tribe of powerful shamans and prophets, but often treated with suspicion by their fellow Nazumi for being mentally unstable, just as Zi himself had been deemed unstable. With that out of the way, let's get back to Emperor Fujiwa and his attempts to try and head off the Gozoku conspiracy before it truly came into being. We're never told exactly just how much the Emperor knew about the Gozoku. The only details that are mentioned is that he chose to target specifically the Crane clan, in part because he knew, or at least suspected, that Doji Raigu was involved. If you recall, when the Emperor had condemned the Lion and Crane clans for weakening the Crab, Raigu had responded with his famous essay criticizing the Emperor's behavior. Unlike his emotionally volatile father, Doji Mizobu, Raigu was a man worth watching. He was a threat in a way that his father simply wasn't. Emperor Fujiwa was also aware that if he was going to stand up to this political conspiracy, he was going to need allies of his own. So long as Hida Ichido led the Crab Clan, he knew that he could rely on them, but the Lion Clan champion, Akodo Mitsuyuki, though loyal to the imperial family, was weak and timorous. The Emperor needed to instill confidence in his right hand. And so one day, the Emperor cooked up a plan that he thought might kill two birds with one stone, weaken the Crane and stiffen the spine of Akodo Mitsuyuki so that the Lion would back him openly. He believed that he had found a weak point in the Crane clan that he could use. That weak point was the Yasaki family. If we recall the Crane clan video, Yasaki was originally an old wise woman who gave Kakita advice when he wished to woo Lady Doji, the kami founder of the Crane clan. Out of gratitude, Kakita not only persuaded Doji to appoint Yasaki as daimyo in her own right, thus founding the Yasaki family, but he also married his sister, Kakita Kiyamori, to Yasuki's son, Yasaki Torikago. Given that the other three Crane families, the Doji, Daidoji, and Kakita, were themselves descended from the children of Doji and Kakita, this means that the four founding families of the Crane clan were all tied together through blood and marriage. But time wears away at all such things, and by the late 4th century, relations between the Yasaki family and the rest of the Crane clan had deteriorated markedly. This was largely because, one, the Crane clan has always been very image-conscious in terms of honor and prestige, and two, because most Rokugani view mercantile or commercial practices as dishonorable. And this was something that the Yasaki kind of specialized in. As such, the rest of the Crane clan had over time come to increasingly look upon the Yasaki as incredibly dishonorable, a stain upon their clan's good name. Naturally, the Yasaki family resented this, as they felt that this was simply them doing their part for the clan, and in fact many innovations on their part had helped make the Crane the wealthiest clan in all of the empire. At this time, the daimyo of the Yasaki family was Yasuki Tsunami, although for some reason some sources give his name as Yasuki Kiringu. All we know about Tsunami is that he had two sons, Nobuto and Jiriki, and that he was a very patient man, aware of his own strengths and weaknesses. He never confronted the Crane in the courts, where he knew they would have the upper hand, which of course caused the rest of the Crane to view him as a coward. The Crane champion, Doji Mizobu, would regularly condemn Tsunami and his family for their dishonorable conduct, and Tsunami had little choice but to grit his teeth and bear it. Here was the weakness that Hante Fujiwa sought to exploit. And so, in year 385, at the Emperor's urging, Crab champion Hida Ichido proceeded to build fortresses closer and closer to the Kenkai Hanto Peninsula, thus slowly but surely making it look like he was encroaching on Crane land. This led to a dispute between the two clans over shipping rights and put even more pressure on the Yasaki family. Because they were merchants and because the Kenkai Hanto Peninsula was mostly their land, the Yasaki had had strong commercial ties to the Crab clan. As tensions between the two great clans escalated, Mizobu gave strict orders to Tsunami to stop his family's business deals with the Crab Clan. Here, Tsunami drew a line in the sand and refused. His family had always enjoyed good relations with the crab, and what's more, being one of the most southernmost families of the crane, the Yasaki appreciated better than most the important service the Crab Clan did to the empire by guarding the southern border. And so he knew just how much the Crab Clan was dependent on trade with people like himself in order to maintain their armies. And so the rift widened as Emperor Fujiwa had hoped. His plan was to ultimately exacerbate tensions between the Yasaki and the rest of the Crane clan to the point of a political crisis, maybe even open conflict within the clan itself, which of course would weaken the Crane and thus the Gozoku conspiracy. And so far, it seemed to be working. The Crane became increasingly fixated by what the Crab were doing to their south and by questioning where the loyalties of the Yasaki family truly lay. And as Fujiwa had hoped, Akodo Mitsuyuki became emboldened by this and began to support him openly. And then, 2 years after this whole thing had begun, in 387, it all suddenly blew up, specifically in the Emperor's face. As pressure from the Crab Clan without and the Yasaki family's defiance within had mounted, Doji Mizobu had become increasingly hostile towards the Yasaki family. His insults and denigration of them became harsher, and at last, in the fateful year of 387, Yasuki Tsunami decided that he'd finally had enough, and did something that no one could have ever expected. Condemned by his own overlord for his association with the Crab Clan, Tsunami, at least partly out of spite, began making overtures to the Crab Clan. But he didn't just ask for assistance from Hida Ichido, he offered to defect to the Crab Clan. And not just Tsunami himself, but his family. And not just his family, but his family's lands and holdings. He literally invited the Crab Clan to claim the Yasaki lands and holdings for themselves. This was a seismic event. Never before had a primary family defected from one clan to another. It also could only mean war, because it would mean a significant gain for the Crab Clan at the Crane's expense, one that the Crane could never tolerate. It would mean a loss of prestige. It would also mean a loss of valuable land. One of the reasons why the Crane had become the richest of the great clans was because in the earliest days they'd claimed for themselves the best real estate, the eastern coastal plain, which had granted them not only a near monopoly on sea trade, but also some of the best farmland in the country. By contrast, the lands of the Crab Clan, partially because of their proximity to the Shadowlands, was rugged and barren. One of the reasons why the Crab Clan had always struggled to be able to support themselves. If the Yasaki defected and the Crab Clan claimed their lands, not only would they have the Yasaki's excellent economical acumen on their side, but they would also have claimed a chunk of that prime real estate for themselves. Open war between two great clans was the last thing that Hante Fujiwa wanted, but in the end, what Tsunami was offering was far too tempting to Hida Ichido. And so, in that same fateful year of 387, the armies of the Crab Clan marched into the Kenkai Hanto Peninsula and seized Clearwater Village, one of the Yasaki family's, and by extension the Crane clan's, most important trading ports. Fully expecting the outbreak of war, the first thing the Crab Clan did with their prize was bring in the engineers of the Kaiyu family to reinforce Clearwater Village's defenses. However, Emperor Fujiwa was still desperate to avoid the outbreak of a war between the two great clans. In an effort to resolve the matter peacefully, he dispatched Miyakazu, daimyo of the Miya family, south to negotiate with the two great clans. Unfortunately, this turned out to be the very worst thing the Emperor could have done, although it wasn't his fault and there was no way he or Miyakazu might have known it. For when the Miya daimyo went south, he took with him Kenshins Helm, an ancient heirloom of the Miya family created in the early days of the empire by the eponymous Kenshin, a retainer of Miya, the family founder. What no one knew, of course, was that Kenshin had been a priest of the old religion that had existed in Rokugan before the kami had fallen from the heavens. Kenshin had despised the kami for changing everything, and so he had created Kenshins Helm as a cursed artifact. The nature of the curse was that whatever the endeavor of the man who wore Kenshin's helm, it would be doomed to failure. And so it was with Miyakazu. Thanks to its subtle but malign influence, attempted peace talks between the crab and the crane broke down. Still bearing the helmet, Miyakazu returned to report the failure to his emperor. For Fujiwa, the outbreak of the Crane-Crab War was nothing less than a disaster. While there had been some conflict in the reign of his predecessors, none of them had ever been counted as actual official wars. Most armed conflicts had been either large-scale raids or single one-off battles. Conflicts that otherwise might have been wars, like the Lion Phoenix War, had been diffused thanks to political and diplomatic intervention. But now, for the first time, diplomacy had failed. The Crane-Crab War would be reckoned the first officially acknowledged war in the long history of the Hantei dynasty, and it had begun on Fujiwa's watch. More to the point, he was at least partially, however unintentionally, an instigator of that war. And many people savvy in the ways of the imperial court were aware of this. The emperor's political reputation cratered. For the leaders of the Gozoku, it was the final proof that this man was not fit to govern the empire. Next time, the Crane-Crab War, the downfall of Hantei Fujiwa, and the Gozoku's rise to power. Until then.